Hey YouTube, hey Danks. Once again, I'm basically on the same old, different day, Danks. What's up with you, man? Audio and video all right? Once again, I have no serious axe to grind. I was thinking about a topic, but uh, wisdom got the better of me, and I decided not to go in that direction. Hey, Cobweb Cavern, welcome to, and evening to you as well. Yeah, Corona Ken, welcome to the stream. I I've just been so inactive the last couple of weeks that I just haven't put out any video, and I know I need to do a certain amount of live content. So the background today is the video I did today. Um, Basically, I have no axe to grind today. I do have an axe. Hey G Bear, welcome to the stream. Yes, I am nice and warm now. We got our heater replaced. We got a 3-ton Linux, 90% efficiency heater put in, and it strapped us for cash, but it what, honey?
I'm just looking for my purse, dear.
Oh,
Okay.
have fun. So anyway, yes, to answer your question, it is nice and warm in here now. The new heater puts out lots of heat, and the fish tanks are staying. Yeah, I've just got stuck wearing my Bernie t-shirt. Hey, Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. My wife's been out all day, and then she just came in just before the stream started, and then now she's gone back out again. So I didn't get a chance to put on a fish related t-shirt. I've just got Bernie on. Corona Ken says if anyone is interested, Petco and PetSmart have API master kits on sale for $21.99. Yeah, that is a great deal. What are they usually? 20, 29 or 30, something like that. Yeah, I probably should avoid getting political because I'll end up ranting the whole time. Hey, Laura, welcome to the stream. So let's just leave it at that. That Bernie probably is the most genuine politician in the U.S. right now. He's definitely not your. Yeah, I seem to remember those master test kit boxes for being right around 30 bucks. So that is a good deal. They're probably trying to sell them off before they go bad. The master kits are good, but there's a couple of the test kits that are missing out of the master kit, which always caused me to just buy them individually. I think I have KH, GH, pH low and high, and nitrate and nitrite. And I have one other, I can't think of it right now. Not sure what it is. somebody in the last stream or the stream before last was talking about phosphate, and I think they do have a phosphate test kit, but I've just never seen the need. 9-ounce free tap water conditioner, nice. Let's see, API is I can't even remember which water conditioner API comes out with. But it should be just about the same as all the others. So what's going on with you guys? I'm basically just doing my water changes after the whole heating incident, and trying to keep up with my maintenance here lately. I slipped and fell on the ice and snow about 2 weeks ago, and I bruised my thigh and my leg and my upper arm where I hit. And I didn't think it was going to be much of an issue, but it turned out to be a lot more of an issue than I thought, and I've been pretty sore. Yes, G-Bear, you are a bad fish keeper. He says, that's right, I should probably buy KH and GH. I moved and haven't had a clue what mine is. Now I want to know. My tank's been up for 3 years and I have no idea. I'm a bad fish keeper. Well, I mean, you know, as long as your fish are doing all right, then you're probably doing all right. And I tend to lean on a TDS measure as my first line of tank testing. That's the axe to grind that I did not go with today. I thought real hard about it. Many of you have been watching Corey and Corvus's and Bob and all the guys, Aqua Pros and Rob from Flip Aquatics, the Maboo Studios thing. Well, in the middle of Cobwebs Cavern says that's a sign of being old. You see ice and snow and don't think I could have fun in that. You think I'm going to slip and fall here. Yeah, when you get older, you got to watch your hips. You can break hips real easily. And I slipped and fell. Pete, my dog, had to go for dental surgery. He was having a hard time with his teeth. One of them was obviously infected and swollen, and I took him in, and when I got him home, he was still so drunk from the anesthesia that he wouldn't get out of the van. He just stayed in the back seat of the van, and it was snowing, it was icing, it was doing everything it could do. And so I went out there and opened up the door. I realized I couldn't pull him out easily, and so I thought, well, I had to run in the house for a pit stop, and I went back out there again, and I opened up the door in front of him. When they had put him in, they put him in on the driver's side, and all he had done was just step halfway across to the other seat and laid down. And so the passenger side is on the curb side of excuse me. Hey, Val. Hey, Glass Boxes, Joel. Welcome to the stream, you two. I've got no issue going today. We're just basically shooting the whatever. Anyway, I opened the curbside door, and I couldn't pull him out. He would not let me get enough leverage on him to pull him out. And with my back the way it is, I couldn't really reach in, stand on the curb and reach in and then pull him out. So I thought, well, I need to run in the house, so I'm going to let him sit here for a minute. Maybe he'll sober up enough when I'm fine, Vals. How are you doing? Maybe while I'm in the house, he'll sober up enough to where I can get him to come out. So I was in the house about 5 minutes, and I came back out, and he was starting to try to move a little bit. And I sat there and I talked to him a little bit, and then I stepped down to the curb, and when I did, I went straight down. My foot hit on some ice, and I went straight down. So I ended up bruising myself up pretty good. And I was, as I was laying there on the ground, I was thinking, I wonder if I broke my hip, and I started moving around, and it didn't really bother me. So I thought, okay, so I got up and fought Pete out of the car and carried him into the house and went on. And for about a week, I was just fine. And then all of a sudden, it started really getting sore. So the last couple of weeks, I have just been basically down with my hip. It's kind of hard to tell whether something's cracked or fractured or something. I think what I ended up doing was bone bruising my hip, and that was so painful that I didn't really want to test it too much by doing a whole bunch of running around and stuff. So I've basically been just sitting a lot here lately, and that's why I haven't really been up doing content like I should. So anyway, during Corey and Corvus's one of the live streams they did, they both went on a rant about how useless TDS meters are. And for all the world, I wanted to do a counter rant about how useful TDS meters are. And yet I understand Corey's feelings about negativity and all of that kind of stuff. So I just decided to not really get into it, to not really broach me being upset about how useless they find TDS meters. Hey, Rob Hicks, welcome to the stream. So I understand that Corey has very low TDS in his water that is public water, and I understand that he has his fish room set up on auto changes where there's a continuous supply of water flow in there. And when you've got a whole fish room set up in that manner, and you're using water that's basically inert, it's just darn near RO water, then I can understand why, if you're not remineralizing that water for your fish, Cobweb says any meter is only useful if you know how to correctly interpret the results it gives you. And I agree with that completely. Hey, Big E's, welcome to the stream, man. So, yeah, Poland spring water for fish tanks. Yeah, you're right, Art. Ruru. Val says he doesn't pay much attention to TDS, but I know it's important. Here is where TDS is valuable and useful and very important. One, you should always TDS meter your tap water every time you do a water change. Because you know what your tap water normally reads, you will have a running idea in your mind of what the TDS meter reads each time you test your tap water. And so if there is a huge difference in the TDS reading that you get this week when you're doing water changes, you will know that something's going on. Then you can get out your nitrate, nitrite, ammonia tests and see if your local water supply has done something to the water that, while useful for humans and usable for humans, is pretty deadly to our fish. I hear all the time people talking about, wringing their hands on the internet because their water has suddenly gone bad. The local water supply is pulling water from a new place all of a sudden, and they're treating it with extra chemicals to make sure that it's safe for human consumption. A Chronicles of Chris's Fish Room. So, I'm saying that a TDS meter is very valuable to check your tap water each time you get ready to do a water change. Now, if you've got your system set up where it is all automatic water change, then I would suggest before running that, or once a week, kick on your tap. You've got a sink or something. Kick on your tap, get a glass of water off of it, and stick that TDS meter in there just so that you know that you are not having some sudden difference in the water that is going to your tank. That's one way that TDS meters are very useful. The second way that TDS meters are very useful is if you are running an RO unit and you need to test that water to make sure that the membrane has not gone bad on that RO unit, and to see that you're still getting 0 to 10 or 0 to 15 or whatever it is that you are finding acceptable for use. And then if you are using that water for like a shrimp tank of neocaridinias that are going to need the TDS to be well over 300, in the 3 to 400 range, then you can use your remineralizer, your KH, your powder or your liquid for GH to add these to your 5-gallon bucket of RO water and get a TDS reading to make sure that it is in the range that your shrimp need. I usually shoot for 400 when I'm remineralizing water, and I still can't do it exactly. I get close. I'm 325 or something, maybe 420, but I need that TDS meter so that I can adjust what I've got in the bucket and add a little more RO water depending on whether it is the right TDS. That's two more ways that TDS meters are very useful: for testing your RO to make sure that your membrane is not going bad, and for testing remineralizing that water. There is a fourth way that a TDS meter is definitely handy. We talk about these test kits, we talk about these test strips. They're very expensive. The API test kit set, master test kit, that's 21 or 30 or 35 pounds. It's a lot of money to buy those test kits. Now, they last quite a while, but it's still a lot of money. For $10, you can buy a TDS meter, and for thousands of tests, you can use that TDS meter for no more expense than the original purchase expense. The battery life usually lasts between 1,000 and 3,000 tests. Okay, I'm telling you to test the water coming out of your tap each time you do a water change, just to make sure that there is no serious problem. Then you know that the water that you are adding to your tank with your dechlor added to it, you have a good idea of what that TDS meter is reading. So you can watch during the water change. You can test your tank before you do the water change and remember that number. Pull out all the water you're going to pull out. Add in all the new water that you're going to put in. And then test that water again and see what difference there is between the TDS of the water going in and the TDS of the tank. It will give you a very good idea on whether you need to change more water or whether you need to change less water. The TDS meter is a very inaccurate measurement. It's based on measuring ions and anions in the water, and these ions and anions are formed by salts, metal salts, nitrate salts, nitrite salts. There's a lot of different kinds of salts, calcium salts, GH salts, all the different chemicals and minerals that make up GH. All of those kinds of things create ions and anions in water. And anions are a negatively charged ion, and ions are a positively charged ion. And that 2-pole TDS meter that you buy regularly, the little test meter, has 2 poles on it. One pole creates a positive field. One pole creates a negative field. It's not like an ohm meter where current is run through the water and then it tests the resistance of that. If you use a 4-pole TDS meter, it will test like an ohm meter. But a 2-pole TDS meter only tests positive field, negative field, half the ions that are going towards the negative, half the ions that are going towards the positive. The only way to get an accurate TDS measurement, a true TDS measurement, is in a laboratory with a set amount of water boiled away to leave residue, and the residue is weighed and then calculated back into the amount of TDS that is in the water, total dissolved solids. So, even though it is inaccurate, if you know what your meter is reading at your tap, you know what your meter is reading in your 5-gallon bucket that has been dechlored, and you know what your meter is reading in that tank before and after you do a water change, then every day after that, you can retest that tank, and you can do this with all your tanks, and you can retest that tank each day and get a graph of what the TDS that your meter specifically is reading, accurately or inaccurately. You're getting the same reading from your meter because the setting doesn't change. So you can track the rise of TDS in your tank as your water evaporates, as more nitrate and nitrites are produced in the tank and disposed of by bacteria. You can test these rises and falls of all these minerals in the tank and have a really good idea if something suddenly goes wrong. If you're going along with a 5 TDS rise each day and all of a sudden it rises 100 one day, that day that it rises, that you get that reading that shows 100 TDS rise, then get your test equipment out, your test strips or your test liquids, and test that tank to figure out what's going on in that tank that's caused that sudden rise. And this to me is the most valuable use of a TDS meter, is to track your readings in your tank, and I would advise writing them down until you get a good feel for what's going on. You will see when you need to do a water change, probably. You will see when something goes wild in the tank. You know, get your test strips or your test liquid out, figure out what's too high in that tank. Is it ammonia? Do you have some calcium that's breaking down suddenly in the tank and you've suddenly gotten a higher TDS reading? A little jar of test strips, even if you cut them in half, and Cobwebs, you're right to bring that up, but even if you cut them in half, that little jar of test strips is going to last you about a month if you really do testing a lot on your tanks. For the same price as that little jar of test strips is, you could have already bought a TDS meter. And then you would be testing with the TDS meter to find out when you needed to test with the test strip. And you would save way more test strips. And that's just how I see TDS meters as being useful, as being important in this hobby, as being a valuable resource for a hobbyist to check the water in their tank, to recognize when there is a very large change, to begin to understand how the values rise versus the evaporation in a tank, to begin to understand how much water you really need to change each time to get the tank back to the reading it was before you did the last water change. I just find it an invaluable resource that allows me, even as imperfect as the TDS meter is, it still offers you a great deal of value. It still offers you a great deal of understanding of how your tank is doing. And it's oh so much easier to pop that meter in and click it and read it and remember it and go to the next tank and drop it in and click it and remember it than it will ever be to do a test strip or a liquid test. So to me, it allows me to check all the tanks in my house and to see by the previous tests that I have gotten from them that it is not way out of whack, that it is in line with evaporation, it's in line with, because if I test a tank and suddenly get 100, even before I get my test strips out or my liquid test out, I'm going to start looking for dead fish in that tank. I'm going to be checking to make sure that I count my number of fish and see the same fish, that none of them have died, because that's one way to spot it real quick, is just by dropping that TDS meter in the water. All right, rant over. Cobweb says, I think if someone made a home electronic water tester that did pH, ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites, they would be onto a winner if it could be sold at a reasonable price. Yeah, I have to second that motion. I've suggested it to several different people in the hobby that if you could have a one test, that you could had a probe or several probes that went into your tank, and you could push a button and get a reading for nitrites, nitrates, uh, TDS, total, KH, GH, organics, uh, and could sell that thing for $60 a pop. I just can't imagine not having one on my tank, especially if it would last for 10 or 15 years and I wouldn't have to buy one every 2 or 3 months. I'd love to see that. A couple of little add-ons to my TDS rant. TDS meters are basically electric current readers that electric conductivity readers. They take the EC reading, they adjust for the temperature of the water because the EC reading and the TDS reading will change depending on water. Cobweb says he'd go up to 150 pounds for something like that, and yeah, but that's a little bit too much money for my blood. I'd have to just have like 1 or 2 of them if that was the price. You know, on my bigger tanks, I would put them in. So, electric conductivity is a product that is adjusted for temperature, and then there is a figure that is there is a figure that is used to arrive at a TDS reading, and those figures are usually one of 2 different figures. And I would suggest that you study up on a TDS meter if you really are thinking about using one, so that you can understand both their inaccuracies and their accuracies. And so you can get an idea of how they can be used effectively. Dank says, literally just solved a problem I've been having with my Sun for months. So stoked it's no longer at a trickle. Was it air in the lines? Suns are really bad to hold on to air, and I'm always wanting to pick them up and turn them upside down, force that air to come out. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the stream, man. I enjoyed the beginning of your stream last night a great deal, Jeremy. I know you were flustered and having trouble with it, but I think you did an excellent job at being an adult and working your way through the issue. That's a good example. Dank says the in-tank and too long of a point without an incline. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you figured it out, man. That's a good lick, because that thing's been running all this time and just doing a quarter of the work it normally should do. Anyway, Jeremy, I just wanted to give you kudos for forging through last night when you when you couldn't find what you needed to get your video going. We could all sense your frustration, and I was waiting for you to pick up a ball peen hammer and start hammering away at that phone, Jeremy. But Jeremy, that's the humanity, that's the human quality that I love about live streams. I mean, we can all sit here and read figures and spout knowledge and do that stuff, but yeah, Dank, air bubbles are really bad in Suns. even if you sit there and pump that button to make that water come through, you never seem to get it out. The only way I ever seem to get it out is to pick it up and turn it on its side enough to where all of a sudden a big line of air bubbles goes out the outline. I fight the one that I've got on my wife's tank every time I do a water change. It came with a little spigot that hangs off the side, and it allows it to catch air and break the siphon. And every time I do a water change, I have to restart that Sun, and it's a mess trying to do that sometimes. I like the price. I like how they're designed. Yeah, that's a good way to do it too, Bracken. And welcome to the stream. I haven't seen you speak up until now, so welcome to the stream, Bracken. I tend to not want to suck on outputs and inputs. If I do, I put that hose in my hand and I make a narrow grasp of that hose, and then I suck on my fingers instead of the hose. Cobweb says he uses Tetra Tech filters. Never had those sort of issues. Well, that's good. Tetra Tech is not a name that I recognize unless it's a Tetra type. Tetra is out of Germany, so a lot of times here in the States we don't get the same filters as you guys do across the pond. Yeah, that's the best way to do it, is to never break the siphon, but invariably I do on my wife's tank, her 75. Okay, we could do a random tip from 500 Ways to Be a Better Freshwater Fish Keeper. I always keep running this book. I recommend this book, not because it's so great, but it's just really interesting to me. Better aquascaping, 185. How do I stop my fish from disturbing the substrate? When layering different grades, sizes of substrate, or when keeping fish that like to dig, use a gravel tidy. It can help to keep the substrate in place and allows you to reposition the top layer easily. A gravel tidy is simply a flexible mesh that can be positioned within the substrate, preventing the layer above and below the mesh from mixing. Plant roots can easily grow through the mesh. And it came with a picture. Let's see if I can get that picture up close. And my experience has been to use Egg Crate, the this stuff, whenever I say the word egg crate, this is the material that I'm talking about. It's actually light diffuser panel. You put them on the inside of 4-foot fluorescent light fixtures, and it causes the light to not reflect but to come straight down. It's called the diffuser panel. The stuff they were talking about in the book was like a flexible plastic mesh that had small holes in it. But you can take this stuff and cut whatever size piece you need out of it. You can see where some of them are broken on this side, and that's the process of me making this cut. I will take my pliers. If I want my piece to be this long, I will take my pliers and I will start breaking the stuff here. I make sure to break it away evenly with the side that's the exact measurement that I want to keep. And I keep breaking until I'm all the way down. Now you can cut these things with a saw, a skill saw, or other kinds of saw, but they tend to shatter and break. And so I've found that just using pliers. So if I cut a piece that was about this long, this wide, and cut it the length that I needed, I could use that piece. I could put my substrate in, put this piece down, and build up from there into the next piece of substrate. And the fish would not be able to dig past this. This stuff's about, it's not quite a ½ inch deep, but no fish is going to be able to dig through that tiny hole and cause the lower substrate to fall. Back in the day, when we were keeping large cichlids in like a 55-gallon tank, we'd put 2 inches of gravel down, then we'd put a piece of this egg crate, light diffuser panel down, cut it to fit whatever was in the tank, and put it down, and then fill the tank with another 2 inches of gravel. And those those would stop the fish from digging more than 2 inches deep. You know, big cichlids, when they're in breeding behavior, and just all of the time really, will dig and dig and dig and dig, but they won't be able to go 2 inches down and disturb the layer of gravel. Uh-oh, Jeremy's trolling. Jeremy wants to know, what if his fish has fingers? Jeremy, I would defy you to show me a fish that could still manage to dig. If you're running under gravel in a tank and you put this diffuser panel down over the top 2 inches of gravel and then add 2 more inches of gravel on top of it, or another inch of gravel, I defy you to show me a fish that could dig it up. That's not saying that there can't be one. And Cobwebs has got a good solution. You can make chips and eat them with tartar sauce. I have dealt with a number of cichlids that were just incorrigible, that would literally rescape your tank for you every night and tear everything in the tank up, break a heater, do whatever they could to, and light diffuser panel, I'm loving it, Jeremy. Keep throwing them curves at me, babe. I'm going to be hitting them out of the park for you. Light diffuser panel has been of invaluable use to me when I've had fish that were continuously getting a heater burn because they were fighting the heater, or they were laying against the heater, or they get knocked into the heater. You can take this light diffuser panel and cut 2 strips and glue them together on a corner and use suction cups to stick them to the wall of the tank and block off a whole corner of the tank. Not to water flow, because these flow really well, but you can use them to create a barrier between your fish and the heater. You know, obviously if you had it in a sump, or if you had it behind a matin filter, it would be even better. But back in the day, we didn't have those very often, and so we had to deal with what we had. They didn't have those plastic clamp-on heater covers back then. You basically just had the glass heater, and that was it. You were lucky if you could actually put the whole thing underwater. Most of them hung on the side of the tank at the top, and if it fell in, it was going to kill everything in the tank and short the heater out too. So I would highly recommend that any Sergeant, you probably won't be able to see it in this video. This video is from the video that I did today, but I think where I've got myself positioned in this video, you're not really going to see them, but I think I've had about 40 fry from the rainbow endlers, and in the beginning they weren't surviving very well. It seemed like the little tiny ones were getting eaten by all the other endlers. So my wife hit on the idea of letting the guppy grass just grow out of control. There's basically nothing in that tank. There is some rock work and there is some wood in the tank, but basically it's just a solid mass of guppy grass, except for the two ends and along the back. So the fish can swim from end to end by going along the back or going along on top of the guppy grass. But as evaporation occurs, it gets harder for them to go across the top. But the females will breed and then winnow their way into that guppy grass deeply, like midway into the tank, and drop all of their fry, and then they'll come back out. And the males, it's too much of a pain in the butt for the males to fight their way all the way in there. They just hang out in the opening areas, and so the females are able to drop their fry, and then they swim away. And also they don't get, hey mister, Smokey climbing the back of my chair. The shrimp can breed in that morass of guppy grass, and the endlers don't come eat them, and the shrimp are perfectly safe in there. So it's just really worked out well. We fight a continuing battle of cleaning it up on both ends and across the back. And there are a couple of other plants in there, but they seem to do okay with the and cobwebs. Sergeant says he utilizes a combination of all natural plants, and the key is spawning mops. And yeah, if this was a bigger tank, if this was a 55, I'd probably think about using spawning mops and then moving them to another tank. I don't really have another tank set up right now, and if I do, I'm probably going to put shrimp in it or fish from Peru. So I don't really have another place. I basically just use the tank that I have, and I've gotten away with it by using a mass of guppy grass inside of it. And if you watch my video, there are 5 or 6 endler fry in that video as well. They're not really in focus very well because it's when I'm panning across. Well, actually, it's right here. You can see one right beside me, right there. And there's another one down low. There they are. There's 2. Oh, that's a shrimp. And they do just fine in there. They seem to be able to pick food off of the guppy grass. And when they get big enough, they come out and join the rest of the crowd. And it seems to work really, really well. I don't know how I'm getting away with about 25 or 30 shrimp and 50 endlers in a 13-gallon tank, but I am. And I also know that the plants are using up most of the nitrate that is produced from the waste. So it works out in a nice symbiotic relationship. Jeremy says, I love guppy grass. My all-time favorite for breeding both live-bearing and non-live-bearing. Yeah. Cobwebs, I couldn't tell you. My wife probably could. If I spent a little while, I could probably look it up. But I'm not sure that anyone really knows exactly what guppy grass is. I could go get a piece out of the tank and show you. Guppy grass is basically long stem duckweed. It will just completely take a tank where it is happy. It will grow massive clumps. Nausea grass. Jeremy's right, and as soon as I heard him say that. But interestingly, it's called nausea grass species, because I think anyone that is serious about plants and knows plants really well will tell you that there's probably 30 different species of nausea grass. One person's guppy grass is not the other person's guppy grass. They all seem to be slightly different. Naha grass. All right, guys, we're winding down to the end of the hour. I hope I managed to express my view that TDS meters are very useful without being Corey's nightmare of negativity. I really have, I firmly believe in Corey and the things that he chooses to do, but I really don't like the TDS hate that comes from him because of the fact that he has 35 TDS water coming out of the tap continuously, which is basically RO water, and that he has the wherewithal to set up a huge automatic water change system with all the bells and whistles. For his system, he can get by without needing a TDS meter for the way that he chooses to run his system. And I respect that. I wish I had the money to set up a fish house and have complete automatic water changes. But that doesn't mean that it can't come back and bite him in the ass really badly if suddenly his local area water system decides to start pumping heavy chloramines excuse me, pumping heavy chloramines, pumping some kind of treatment that's just a one-off deal. It could kill every fish in all of his tanks if he is not ready to test that water all the time. And I think that that's a critically important point that he is missing. And Corvus seemed to have the exact same ideas about it in that live stream. And it just basically irked the hell out of me that both of them were going to sit, hey Flynn's Fish Farm, just as I use an expletive deleted, Flynn shows up. Yeah, so my point is not to be a negative nanny, not to be ugly to Corey or Corvus, both of whom I highly respect and love their content, but it just seems to be a seriously valid point that a lot of us can get a great deal of use out of a TDS meter. And if you're just now tuning in, you're going to have to go back and listen to the 4 main areas where I felt like, even though a TDS meter is inaccurate, even though a TDS meter does not read everything that is in the tank, even though a TDS meter does not tell you what combination of mineral ions or organic ions are being read, it still is a useful tool if you learn how to, over a long period of time, read how the changes in your tap water and in your tank water and in the combination of your water changing. Rob Hicks says, I think he was saying people don't use it right, as he said it works if you do a water test with it. It's a great tool. Yeah, I just, this was one of those Maboo live streams, the new Maboo live streams. And by the way, I'm extremely jealous of that setup. Corvus did an excellent job on that table. I found it almost more important to look at that table than to follow what they were saying. But I think if you will watch that particular one that I saw, Corona is asking, anyone know, does sodium thiosulfate neutralize chloramines? Ken, I think it does, but I think it does it less effectively, that chloramines are much harder to break down than regular chlorine is. So I think that you need to over-treat. I mean, basically, sodium thiosulfate is the main ingredient in every dechlor that is sold. Now, there may be some that don't have it, and I don't recognize that there may be some that don't use that chemical at all in them. But my understanding is it's in all of them, and that you can just as easily buy your own sodium thiosulfate in bulk, and there are lots of videos on the web that describe doing exactly that, and how much you need to mix up in a volume of water to treat chlorine in a fish tank. If you look around for that, using sodium trisulfate to neutralize chlorine, not chloramine, not chloramine, but chlorine, I think that you will find several really good videos. I keep kicking myself every time I go to the fish store and have to pay all that money out for my Prime or my Safe. I basically think that's what Safe is just powdered sodium thiosulfate. There may be a couple of additives, but I think that's basically what Safe is just a chemically pure form of sodium thiosulfate that they've used to make dechlor. And Cobweb Caverns is pretty much echoing what I said, that it can break it down, but that its concentration is not enough to completely break it down after it turns most of it into ammonia. Jeremy says it's tough to convey the message sometimes via the interwebs. In conclusion, the aforementioned topic is agreed upon. if it was a room of 5 people each would agree, then points for which you mentioned. Yeah. Well, I personally know that Rob uses a TDS meter all the time. And I kind of tend to believe that, although I've never seen Bob use one, I would kind of tend to believe that Bob uses one as well. And I also believe that I've seen a TDS meter in Corvus's videos. And I know Corey has one. He may not use it, or he may have taken it back to the store or something. But I just think that and it's nitpicking on all the great services that they offer. But I just think that saying that the way they did in that video's live stream was a disservice to people that don't have 30 TDS water coming out of the tap that never changes. Yeah, Lucas swears by TDS. And that don't have a massive automatic water change system set up that runs so much water through the tank that they don't really worry about it so much. If I had that, I would use my TDS meter a lot less. But I promise you that once a week I would test my tap water just to make sure that my local water company hasn't, slipped a Mickey in there to kill all my fish. Because I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Yeah, I just think Corey has decided that TDS meters are not for him. And I am all for Corey being free to decide that he is not a great fan of TDS meters. Don't get my, this lesser rant. Originally in my mind, this was going to be a real rant. I was going to get downright negative about this because I think it's a problem to do that. But thinking about it and cooling off, let me go ahead and decide that to respect Corey's idea of reducing negativity in our community, which I wholly support, that I would not do it. And I wasn't even going to talk about it, but everybody else started talking about testing early on, and there we go. I already had it queued up. So I hope that I didn't come across as negative about this, either towards Corey or towards Corvus or anybody. Oh, Rob. Oh, contraire, Rob. You don't realize what my personality is really like. I can rant and rave with the best of them. Not only do I rant and rave, I do the worst possible thing, which is lecture. I will go on and on and on and on and on and on. And that's even worse than ranting and raving, is to lecture someone about what cow ate what cabbage in whose garden. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be negative. I crossed Corey with my remarks about Dean's video, where I felt like I was perfectly within my I'm not worried about him leaving me in the bushes of Peru. Yeah, I really wanted to avoid a negative just a derogatory rant on my part. I wanted to keep it calm and cool and unruffled. Unfortunately, my feelings about certain things get the better of me at times, and I tend to rant. Okay, guys, we're over the hour. Thank you so much for allowing me to rant in your ear for an hour about a subject that I TDS with frozen fried shrimp. Okay, guys, have a good rest of your weekend. Jeremy, enjoy your club meeting, and all of you be well and try to take care of your fish. Good luck. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.